questions. Anyone here want to answer me? He didn't go to the masjid, he went to the suq. He said, who was there before God? Man kana qabla Allah, who was there before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He said, in what direction does Allah face? And what is Allah doing right now? He said that Abu Hanifa was troubled. Like he didn't sit for adhkar, he didn't sit for his lectures. He immediately went to the Khalifa, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. One of the most famous debates on atheism is the debate of Abu Hanifa with the atheist, where the man from Ad-Dahriyun, the people who believe that we just die and there's nothing, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was challenged to a debate by that man. And you know, this is a very famous story. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, which prison? So he said, that person. He said, I want him released. I want him out. How much money does he owe? SubhanAllah, he actually says, how much money does he owe? And one of the narration mentions 85,000 dirhams. Not a small amount of money. That young man became one of the people who always prayed in the first row being made. So the man started to laugh and he said, you think, you expect us to believe that? He said, SubhanAllah, you people expect me to believe that all of this came from nothing, but you can't believe that a safina came from nothing? The next day, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah went to Fajr, and Zufar, Imam Zufar, we'll talk about, he said that Abu Hanifa was troubled. Like he didn't sit for adhkar, he didn't sit for his lectures. He immediately went to the Khalifa, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, and he said, where is he? Where's my neighbor? What happened to him? And Abu Ja'far looked into it and he said, well, he was put in prison. He's in prison. Why is he in prison? Because he owed so many people money. You know, in essence, eventually he just got put in prison. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, which prison? So he said, that person. He said, I want him released. I want him out. How much money does he owe? SubhanAllah, he actually says, how much money does he owe? And one of the narration mentions 85,000 dirhams. Not a small amount of money. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah went home, he got his money. He said, to Abu Ja'far, send someone with me to that prison so they'll know it's from you, from the Khalifa. Here's his money, I'll pay it off and I want him out. Spends the entire day trying to secure this young man's release. He gets him released and this young man comes out and he sees Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and he's like, why would you do that? Like, why would you even care for someone like me? And subhanAllah, Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he laughs and he says, Aturana ada'nak? Did we forget about you? Did we abandon you? And subhanAllah, the most beautiful part of this narration from an Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam al-Dhahabi says, فَأَصْبَحَ ذَلِكَ الرَّجُلْ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الصَّفِّ الْأَوَّلِ. That young man became one of the people who always prayed in the first row. And he became a student of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, وَحَسُنَ إِسْلَامُ, and his Islam became good, and his ilm became good, and he became a teacher of fiqh as well. So that's expressing confidence, loving. It's a consistent theme. All of these things, you tie them together, the way he was with the people, the way he was humble with the people. And, even in take away from, or go away from just the humility part and the modesty part, just the kindness and the approachability. Zufar says that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he used to make everyone around him feel comfortable. No one felt out of place in his gathering. He said, not the alim or the jahil, the most knowledgeable person or the most ignorant person, the rich person, the poor person, a sinner or a righteous, a fajr or a mu'min, a sinner or a righteous person, they all felt comfortable in his presence. He said he used to laugh a lot and he used to, to care for the people. And he said, I've never seen a man in 20 years, because he sat with him for 20 years, he said, I've never seen a man more willing to listen to people's concerns and advise them. Like Imam Abu Hanifa, despite being as busy as he was, he would take the time, he'd listen to their concerns and he'd advise them. He said he spent his mornings in dhikr and then in knowledge. And then as soon as he would finish, his halaqah, the people would swarm him. And before they could ask him about their problems, he would ask them about theirs. So he'd say, where's the sick person? How's brother so-and-so doing? How is your son? How's your father doing? How's your mother doing? He would ask them, subhanAllah, before they came to him and said, yeah, I just want to follow up with you on. He would ask them, and subhanAllah, he would remember their problems. So he'd say, how is this person doing? How's that person doing? So he asked about them. And if there was a sick person amongst them, he'd go from the masjid to visit that sick person. So he wouldn't just say, give my salam to that person. He'd go visit that sick person, subhanAllah, with the student or whoever came to them. And if someone passed away from his students or from the families of his students, he never missed their janazah. And if anyone was in financial difficulty from his students or the families of his students, he gave them charity. And if anyone from his students wanted to get married, he proposed on their behalf. SubhanAllah. I mean, he cared for the people that were in his circle. He cared for his society. And he said at night, no one came around him. He only reserved that time for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So during the day, he's a people's person. He's out there, he's interacting with people. But no one would bother him at night because they knew that that was his time for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was his time for his qiyam. And subhanAllah, there are many narrations. So he said Ash-Sha'bi used to make jokes when he'd answer questions. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he used to laugh sometimes at some of the ridiculous questions he'd get asked, and he'd answer with funny answers as well to put people at ease. So a man came to him and said that, if I'm swimming in the river and I'm taking a bath, do I have to face the Qibla as I'm in the river? And Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he started laughing. And he said, if I was you, I'd probably watch your clothes. Right? Don't worry about facing the Qibla, just face your clothes. Right? Because someone might come and take your clothes, you know? So don't worry about facing the Qibla. So people used to ask him ridiculous questions, but they felt comfortable and he'd answer them in a certain way. Now, subhanAllah, what was his brilliance like? What was the aql of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah like? And what was he like as a debater? And this is really powerful because, as we said in Iraq, you really had to be able to hold your own. You're dealing with atheists, you're dealing with Christians, you're dealing with people of philosophy, you're dealing with all the deviant groups. You really have to know your stuff and hold your own. One time he was debating with a Christian, and just listen to what he said to him. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises the use of intellect in the Quran in almost every surah. Almost every surah has some form of أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ. Don't they think? Don't they use their intellect? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly praises the use of intellect. He said in almost every surah in the Quran, he said, I've read your entire Bible and I haven't seen a single praise of logic or intellect. Meaning what? He was talking about the difference, subhanAllah, how he views the religion of Islam, that this is an intellectual faith, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites a person to use their aql, to use their thought. And so he was a brilliant man in debating with people. He was a brilliant man in understanding fiqh. And there are multiple stories of that. And the way that he dealt with people. So there are the debates that he had. You could take it from the debates. One of the most famous debates on atheism is the debate of Abu Hanifa with the atheist, where the man from Ad-Dahriyun, the people who believe that we just die and there's nothing, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was challenged to a debate by that man. And this is a very famous story. And he came late to the debate. The people of Kufa wanted to see him debating. He was obviously a very arrogant and angry atheist guy. So they wanted to see what the debate was going to go like. Abu Hanifa came really, really, really late. And he said, what happened? Did you have to think about your arguments? Did you get scared? Were you thinking about not coming? Then Imam Abu Hanifa gives him that long, elaborate story about a safina. He says that, I went out and I live across the river and I waited for the wind to blow a certain way and for the wood to be assembled and the nails to come from the bottom of the ocean and for myself to get into the safina, and then I waited for the wind to help me sail across. Right? So he just talks about how I had to wait for this safina being made, this ship being made, or this boat being made. So the man started to laugh and he said, you think, you expect us to believe that? He said, subhanAllah, you people expect me to believe that all of this came from nothing, but you can't believe that a safina came from nothing? So the man was like, he fell for it and they lost the debate, subhanAllah. And apparently, it's, in one of the narrations, this person became Muslim as well. And even at a very young age, by the way, we said in the souk, these people still used to talk and they used to debate. And in the souk, there was once a man that came, and he was a person from the Romans, and he said, I have questions. Anyone here want to answer me? He didn't go to the masjid, he went to the souk. He said, who was there before God? Man kana qabla Allah, who was there before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He said, in what direction does Allah face? And what is Allah doing right now? 3 very odd questions. And he kept asking these questions and people didn't know how to answer him. They're like, everyone kind of ignored him. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he got sick of him. And he was working with his father at the time. So he's still a very young man. So this is 11 years old. He's an 11-year-old boy. And he goes up to the guy and he said, what was your first question? He said, who was there before Allah? He said, do me a favor and count from 10 to 0 backwards. So he counted from 10 to 0 backwards. Or actually 10 to 1. They didn't have 0, right? 10 to 1. So when he got to 1, he said, that's it. He said, can't you go further? He said, no. He said, likewise, we don't go further than Allah the One. Right? So he said, what was your second question? He said, in what direction does Allah face? So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, do you own candles? He said, yeah. He said, when you light up your candles, they light up the entire room, right? He said, yeah. He said, does it stay facing only one direction, or does it just light up the entire room no matter what direction it's facing? He said, no matter what, it lights up the entire room. He says, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. We don't ask that question. It doesn't matter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the light of the heavens and the earth. Then he said, what was your third question? And as the man was about to ask the third question, Imam Abu Hanifa was kind of like upset with this. He's a kid, right? He's 11 years, but he's like, you know what? I'm sick of this guy. He's yelling and screaming in the marketplace and making a fool of everyone. So he said, you know, people can't hear my answers because I'm really young. So he said, how about we switch spots? Because the man was sitting, you know, he put like a stool or something and started standing on it and speaking. He said, how about we switch spots so people can hear my answer? So the man said, why? He said, because, you know, first, he said, look, 2 questions, no one heard my answer. He said, the third one, I want everyone to hear my answer. So he said, fine. So he got off the stool. Abu Hanifa stood on the stool. And he said, what was your third question? He said, what was the third question? He said that, what is Allah doing right now? What is Allah doing right now? ماذا يفعل الله? What's Allah doing right now? He said, Allah is humiliating a humiliated man, and Allah is honoring me. SubhanAllah, that's like the ultimate, like just, poof. Now be gone, right? So as a young man, he has these debating skills. So he was able to, and this is Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah says that, you know, people used to excel in debating with certain groups. Like you study a group and you debate them. He said Abu Hanifa could debate with any group and he could win. So the Khawarij of that time, you know, the Khariji movement again was based in Iraq anyway. And they used to curse Uthman and Ali. May Allah be pleased with them. They made takfir. They said Uthman and Ali were disbelievers. May Allah be pleased with them. So one, you know, Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he goes to the house of one of the leaders of the Khawarij, which is very bold in and of itself because these people are, you know, very harsh. And he knocked on the door and the man said, what do you want? He said, I'm just coming because I have a young man that wants to propose to your daughter. And the narration says Abu Hanifa was known for that. So it wasn't like far out that Abu Hanifa is coming on behalf of one of his students. He said, why would I want to marry my daughter to one of your students? So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, what if I told you that he is of the best character? That he is the most handsome of my students? That he is the richest of them? That he is the one who has the best nasab, the best lineage? That he prays the entire night and he reads the entire Quran? So the man was like, okay, let me see this man that you're talking about. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, but look, there's one issue that might be a complication. He said, what is it? He said, he's Yahudi, he's a Jew. The guy was like, you want me to marry my daughter to a Jew? Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, subhanallah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to you, married his daughter to a Jew. In fact, he married 2 of his daughters to a Jew because they said Uthman was Yahudi. They said Uthman was a Jew. He said Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam married 2 of his daughters to a Jew. And you don't want to marry your daughter to a Jew? And the man was like completely, you know, subhanAllah, again, like he makes these people look like fools. Now, the Khawarij were dangerous, right? Because they used to set up checkpoints. And throughout the Ummah, they used to set up these little checkpoints. And, you know, they considered everyone to be disbelievers. So if you got caught up in one of their checkpoints, they would kill you. If you weren't one of them, they'd ask you a few questions. If you didn't answer the way they wanted you to answer, they'd kill you. So one time, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was walking with his students, and they ended up between Kufa and Basra at one of the checkpoints of the Khawarij. So the man comes up to him, and you know he knows Abu Hanifa, he's about to kill him. So Imam Abu Hanifa's students are panicking. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah says, don't worry, I've got this. So the man comes to him, and he recites to him, and this is Surah At-Tawbah, verse 6, he says, وَإِنْ أَحَدٌ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ اسْتَجَارَكَ فَأَجِرْهُ حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ. He said that, you know, there's an ayah in the Quran that if any one of the disbelievers seeks your protection, then grant him protection and recite to him the word of Allah, then deliver him to Ma'mana, deliver him to his place of safety. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, he recited that ayah when they came. And the man was kind of taken aback. Imam Abu Hanifa said, I'm a kafir, right? I'm a disbeliever, right? He said, yeah. He said, okay, read the Quran to me. So the man read the Quran to them. He escorted them across, delivered them to safety, and let them go. Imam Abu Hanifa said, look, I'm a kafir, right? So you got to give me that right. Allah says, the disbelievers have the right to safety. So you need to deliver me to my place of safety and recite the Quran to me. So subhanAllah, I mean, he had such a brilliant mind in debate. And also, subhanAllah, the way he answered questions, like there were things that he would say, and this is even with the daily situations. A man came to him once and he told him that, I can't find my money, I can't find my gold, I've lost it all. He said, go home and keep praying, keep doing salah until you find it. So he went home and he started to pray. Then he came back to him and he said, Alhamdulillah, I found it all, Jazakallah khair, this is awesome and things of that sort. He said to him, how is it that it worked? What is it that you knew, Ya Imam? He said, well, when you enter into salah, shaitan reminds you of everything of your dunya. So he said that I told you, go to your salah, because I knew as soon as you went into salah, shaitan's going to come and tell you, okay, here's where it is. Right? There's an incident that took place with Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf. This is one of my favorite incidents, and we haven't even started talking about his students. But Abu Yusuf was a beautiful student of Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, and Abu Hanifa really raised him, invested in him, and so on and so forth. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And Abu Yusuf got sick, and Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, thought that he died, and so he praised him. The praise got back to Abu Yusuf, and Abu Yusuf said, well, if Imam Abu Hanifa praised me, I can have my own halaqah now. So he went and he started his own halaqah. So when Abu Hanifa found out, Imam Abu Hanifa sent a man to him to basically confuse him. He said, go to him and ask him, if someone goes to a souk, if he goes to a marketplace, and he takes his garment to a tailor, he finds the tailor and he says, here's my thobe. He said, I want you to tailor it and I want you to give it back to me in 2 days. They agree upon the price and everything. All right? So he pays him the money. Monday, I'll come back Wednesday and I'll get my thobe. He said, if the man decides to steal the thobe, so when he comes back on Wednesday, the tailor says to him, sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. You never gave me a thobe, and he denies everything. Then the man after that goes back to him and says, you know what? No. Actually, astaghfirullah, I seek forgiveness from Allah. This is your thobe. All right? You guys follow the question or not? Yeah. All right? Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, ask Abu Yusuf, who keeps the money? Does the tailor get the money? Or does the man get the money? So he said, if Abu Yusuf tells you that the man gets the money back, tell him, akhtat, you're wrong. And if Abu Yusuf tells you that the tailor keeps the money, tell him, akhtat. Tell him you're wrong. So the man goes and he asks Abu Yusuf, and Abu Yusuf responds, the man gets the money back. He said, akhtat, you're wrong. Then he said, the tailor keeps it? Because he knows this is a student. He said, no, you're wrong about that too. So he leaves him. And Abu Yusuf, what does he do? He goes back to Abu Hanifa to ask him the question that he doesn't understand. So subhanAllah, he comes back to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, like I got asked this question that I don't know. And this is their first interaction since he started his halaqah. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he says to him, he said, look, if the man went to him, and when he gave him the thobe, the man intended to steal the thobe from the beginning, then there was never a aqd, there was never a contract. Meaning it was aqd batil in the first place, it was falsehood. So the money shouldn't have been, the money doesn't belong to him. He said, but if the man took the thobe, and while he was tailoring it, liked it, and said, you know what, I'll keep it, then said, no, astaghfirullah, and I'll give it back, then the tailor keeps the money. All right? Do you guys understand the answer? You still don't understand it. All right, I'm not going to go too much into it because of time, but if the tailor intended to steal the thobe from the beginning, then the money was paid on the basis of a contract that was really never there. Okay? But if the tailor really honestly was going to do it, but then the tailor, he had some fitna inside of him and thought about stealing it and then told him, you have no thobe, then went and followed him back and said, no, actually it's yours, then the tailor keeps the money because he still fulfilled the conditions of the contract. So Abu Yusuf said, oh, okay. And Abu Hanifa told him, now sit down and stay in this halaqah. Right? You're not ready yet. You're still not ready. Okay? So it's the brilliance that he had. And now let's talk about these students and what he used to do with his students. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, his students describe him as a very loving teacher, the same way that he got, the same love that he got from Ash-Sha'bi and Hammad, that he constantly used to care for their affairs, he used to take care of them, he used to advise them always. And he used to say to them, Istaghfir li asatidatik. Seek forgiveness for your teachers. وَمَنْ أَخَذْتَ مِنْهُمُ الْعِلْمِ. And whoever you took knowledge from, seek forgiveness for them. وَأَكْثِرْ مِنْ زِيَارَةِ الْمَشَايِخ. And keep visiting the people of knowledge. And he said, and remember your death. أكثر من زيارة القبور, and frequently visit the graves to remind yourself. وأكثر من زيارة الحرمين, and frequently visit the two harams. And he says that, beware of the way that you walk and that you talk. Focus on the way that you walk and talk. Make sure that you display the best of adab. So subhanAllah, his lectures were not just, halal, haram. They really were, he used to give them, mentorship. He used to advise them in that way. And Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, what's unique about him and his students, that he raised his students to be scholars that could debate with him. Right? He didn't keep them as students. He really raised them to where they were called ashab Abi Hanifa, the companions of Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he said, I have 36 ashab, I have 36 students that I consider on a level of being companions that debate with me and so on and so forth. He said 28 of them are capable of being qudha, they're capable of being judges. He says of that 28, 6 of them are mujtahideen, they're scholars in their own right. 6 of them are capable of giving fatwa in their own right. He said 2 of them are capable of even superseding or going past my qawl, my statements in our discussions. And he pointed to Abu Yusuf and Zufar. Abu Yusuf and Zufar. Shaybani comes later. Okay? So Abu Yusuf, Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf and Zufar. Now the point is here that Abu Hanifa used to surround himself with scholars of hadith, surround himself with scholars in different things, and they'd have a debate, and then they'd come to a conclusion collectively as a majlis, as a gathering. He raised Abu Yusuf and Zufar, these 2 scholars, to where they got on the level that they were at their opinion. At times he would say, you know what, you guys are right. And their opinion would actually go past his opinion. And even in the madhab of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, Abu Yusuf's opinions are just as many as Abu Hanifa. The amount of opinions of Abu Yusuf in the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa is just as many as his. So let's start off, let's talk about his students. The first one that people are a little, don't know much about, his name is Zufar. Zufar ibn al-Hudayl. Zufar ibn al-Hudayl. And Zufar was considered the highest of Abu Hanifa's students actually, the most knowledgeable of them. He was the oldest of them, so he was the most senior of them. And when Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah passed away, Zufar actually assumed his seat, but Zufar died right after Abu Hanifa, which is why you don't have much of his legacy in the madhab. Okay, because Zufar didn't live long after Abu Hanifa. He passed away right after Abu Hanifa. Okay? Then you have Abu Yusuf. What's Abu Yusuf's real name? Yaqub ibn Ibrahim. Now you see why Abu Yusuf. His name was Yaqub ibn Ibrahim, so his nickname, Abu Hanifa actually called him Abu Yusuf. And that's loving as well that you give your students those kunyas, right? So he called him Abu Yusuf, Ya Aba Yusuf, because his name was Yaqub, the son of Ibrahim. Abu Yusuf came from a very good household, and he was very intelligent, even as a child. So he used to speak, you know how some kids speak at a much earlier age? So they said Abu Yusuf had complete sentences before the age of 1 year old. I mean, like he was very, very eloquent, well-spoken, even when he was a baby. Like he was already putting sentences together. So everyone knew he was going to be intelligent and brilliant. So Abu Hanifa rahimahullah took him at a very young age, like when he was still a kid. And his mom started to cry because Abu Yusuf loved Abu Hanifa and only wanted to learn Islam now. His mom started to cry. He said, why are you crying? She said, well, I'd hope that this is going to be someone that's going to be a doctor or a politician, or like I had high hopes for him. SubhanAllah, like he's going to study Islam, like really? He's going to become a sheikh? Like I had high hopes for him. I thought he was going to be an engineer. I thought he was going to be really great in something else. So Abu Hanifa, he laughed and he said, listen, don't worry. He said, I promise you that I'm going to raise him to a status that the kings would be feeding him from their own hands. I've got him. I'll take care of him. And Abu Yusuf says that Abu Hanifa funded me and my family for 10 years. He paid for our expenses in the house. He took me, he bought me clothes, he brought me into his halaqah, and he sat me down. And after every halaqah, he'd go over again with him to say, did you understand everything that I said? And I would repeat everything he said in the halaqah. So Abu Hanifa really mentored this kid, subhanAllah, knowing how special he was. And then Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah even sent him to learn from Imam Malik. You see, subhanAllah, how Imam Abu Hanifa is. He wants his students to be broad and develop that broadness. He sent him to learn from Imam Malik, which is why Abu Yusuf sort of merged the school of Abu Hanifa with the school of the people of hadith, right? And brought the hadith component into the Hanafi school of thought to a much greater level, because Abu Hanifa sent him there. And Abu Hanifa rahimahullah trained him. He spent on him and so on and so forth. And Abu Hanifa rahimahullah loved him like a son. And Abu Yusuf, subhanAllah, became, as Abu Hanifa said, he became Qadi al-Qudha. He became the head of all judges in the Khilafah of al-Abbasiyah. He became the head of all judges. In the time of Harun al-Rashid, it was Abu Yusuf. And subhanAllah, he was so brilliant and so intelligent, just like Abu Hanifa. One time Harun al-Rashid, you know how people get really elaborate, especially the Arabs with divorcing their wives. They always bring in all these like other components. I don't know how much other cultures do it, but they bring in like these weird oaths and weird sentences. Even till now, by the way. Like I get the weirdest divorce cases. All right, like I told my wife she's divorced 1,000 times if she doesn't take the garbage out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's like, what? I've heard some weird stuff, right? So even in the time of them, and you know, they used to make dumb talaq oaths. Harun al-Rashid once made a really dumb talaq oath on his wife. Once he divorced his wife, and he said to her, unless you can leave my kingdom today, you're divorced. I don't have air travel then. And he felt bad about it after he said it. So he's like, wait a minute, I don't want to divorce my wife. So now he's in a dilemma because he's like, I told my wife that unless you can leave my kingdom, and it's practically impossible for her to get out of the kingdom of Harun al-Rashid in one night. So he called Abu Yusuf and he's like, what do I do? So Abu Yusuf said, you know, repeat the oath to me, I want to hear it again. So Abu Yusuf said, tell her to sleep in the masjid because that's not your kingdom. So subhanAllah, she slept and the kingdom was right across the street from the masjid. So Harun al-Rashid's wife spent the night in the masjid so that the divorce wouldn't count. SubhanAllah. So he was very intelligent. He became a great leader, a great qadi. He wrote many books. Abu Yusuf wrote many books. Only 2 of them survived. All right, 2 of the books of Abu Yusuf survived. Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf survived. One of them is called Al-Rad ala Sayr al-Awza'i. Al-Rad ala Sayr al-Awza'i. Imam al-Awza'i, the Imam from Lebanon, who represented the school of hadith in Sham, was very harsh on Imam Abu Hanifa. Very harsh on Imam Abu Hanifa. So Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf wrote a response to him defending Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. Then the second one is something that, you know, in economics still has survived today. He wrote Kitab al-Kharaj, the book of taxation. Harun al-Rashid asked Abu Yusuf, he said, summarize everything, all of the rulings on taxation for me, you know, in Islam. So Abu Yusuf wrote a masterpiece on taxation, which is still used, and by the way, has found itself in our modern day economics. SubhanAllah, you can trace some very specific taxation laws to Abu Yusuf's Kitab al-Kharaj until today. When you study economic theory, till now, there is a connection to Abu Yusuf, even to the non-Muslim society. So Abu Yusuf was the greatest of his students after Az-Zufar. You know, he was the one that really carried the madhab in that time. And then you have Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, and this is the last student we'll talk about. Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. And Imam al-Shaybani rahimahullah, and these are, Abu Yusuf and al-Shaybani are as-Sahibain or al-Shaykhain. They're called in the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa the 2 scholars, the 2 great sheikhs, the 2 companions. Al-Shaybani was only 18 when Abu Hanifa died. But he studied with him, you know, just like Abu Yusuf, he was taken in at a young age and mentored and so on and so forth. And when Abu Hanifa passed away, he dedicated himself to Abu Yusuf as well. Okay? This is the man who spread the Hanafi madhab through the world, Al-Shaybani. Because he was young when Abu Hanifa passed away, he lived a long life. He interacted with many, many, many different scholars of hadith as well, which we're gonna show the whole diagram, inshallah, which shows you all the interactions between the madhab. He interacted with all of them. He spread the madhab through the entire, Muslim world, and he wrote the most books in the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Interestingly enough, when Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah first saw him as a kid, he came to Abu Hanifa's majlis, and Abu Hanifa told him, are you a hafiz of Quran yet? He said, no. He said, go memorize the Quran and come back. So he was initially turned away to go memorize the Quran, to go do hifd, and then he came back, and he became one of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah's greatest students. And he learned from Imam Malik for 3 years. He taught Ash-Shafi'i for a few years. So the whole madhab is connected as well through Ash-Shaybani. And he wrote many, many, many of the books. He wrote a total of 6 books himself in the Hanafi fiqh. All of these books together, Al-Mabsut, Al-Ziyadat, Al-Jami' Al-Saghir, Al-Sir Al-Saghir, Al-Jami' Al-Kabir, Al-Sir Al-Kabir, I just went through them quickly. They all compromise, they're what's called Al-Kafi in the Hanafi madhab. The encyclopedia of the Hanafi madhab are basically his 6 books. These are the most These books have the most authority in the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. And then there are two other things which are just some of his fatwas. And he named them Al-Haruniyat. Who can figure out why it would be called Haruniyat? The Khalifa, Harun al-Rashid. So basically fatwas that he gave in the time of Harun al-Rashid. And then he had Riqiyat. Al-Riqiyat. When he moved to the city of Al-Riqqa, then he had his fatwa there. And the ulama were very, very, very strict on making sure which fatwas were old and which ones were new and how their perspectives changed with context, which is very important here as well. So you have those students of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. What did his peers say about him? Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala said, we are all iyal, we are kulluna iyal. We are all children, dependent little children on Imam Abu Hanifa when it comes to fiqh. All of us. And you will find that in fact, let me just go ahead and show you guys right now on the screen just what, Imam al-Shafi'i was not playing when he said that we are all iyal on Abu Hanifa when it comes to fiqh. If you look here, this is Kufa. I'm going to talk about the influence on Hanafi fiqh, but look down at Imam Abu Hanifa right there, and we'll go past the upper chains. There's Imam Abu Hanifa. There are his students, the three students we just mentioned. Then look how they connect, and may Allah reward Sister Nai for spending all the time working on this. MashaAllah, we got it done. If you go to Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, he becomes a student of Imam Malik, a teacher of Imam al-Shafi'i, who in turn becomes a teacher of Imam Ahmad. And then you go to Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf, he becomes the first teacher of Imam Ahmad. So literally every one of the schools of fiqh was influenced by Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. It all comes, at the end of the day, the touch of Imam Abu Hanifa's fiqh came into all of the madhab after him, into the other three madhabs very, very, very strongly. So Shafi'i said, literally, we're like children when it comes to fiqh with Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. We were dependent upon him. And Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, who had a madhab for over 100 years, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, in front of Imam Abu Hanifa were like small birds in front of a falcon. And he said when Abu Hanifa used to visit Sufyan al-Thawri, he used to stand up for him. And he wouldn't stand up for anyone other than him. And he said, this man holds a rank higher than my peers. And he said, if I didn't stand up for his ilm, for his knowledge, I would stand up for his age. He was older than him. And he said, if I didn't stand up for his age, I would stand up for his taqwa. I would stand up for his fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if it wasn't for his taqwa, then for his fiqh. SubhanAllah. So there's so many reasons for me to stand up for him. And we find Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, we said many problems were solved when Imam Abu Hanifa met Imam Malik. Before that, it was standoffish between Ahlul Hadith and Ahlul Ra'i. When Imam Malik met Abu Hanifa, they spent a lot of time together. A lot of time together. And they sat together, and subhanAllah, it's a private room, right? There are no students allowed. They talk. Both of them, when they would come out of the room after talking to each other, would be covered in sweat. They made each other sweat, because they were both at that level, right? Where they'd never been challenged by anyone to that level. So they'd make each other sweat. They'd come off with beads of sweat on their face and wipe the sweat off of their face after sitting with one another. And Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala would say that this man is from the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ. This man took from the inheritance of the Prophet ﷺ. He'd praise Imam Malik. And Imam Malik rahimahullah said, this man is on the straight path. He's on Sirat al-Mustaqim. So they'd praise each other. And Imam Malik once told the Shafi'i, he said, Abu Hanifa is so brilliant that he could convince you that this pole is gold. SubhanAllah, his skills in speaking and in debating are so much that he could convince you that this pole is gold. So they spent a lot of time together and they worked out their issues, if you will, and there was a respect, and that's when Abu Hanifa sent his students to study with Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala while he was still alive and after his death. I mean, it's only natural that his two greatest students, Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf and Al-Shaybani, both went to Imam Malik after that. SubhanAllah, there was a natural transition there. There are some other statements. Abu Muawiyah al-Darir, he said loving Abu Hanifa is part of loving the Sunnah. Abdullah ibn Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala, who had a very, very important role in spreading the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, the great scholar, the great Zahid, he was a Hanafi himself. And when he heard of the criticisms of Imam al-Awza'i, he went to al-Awza'i and he spoke to him and he compiled everything. He wrote for him everything that he heard from Abu Hanifa, and he called it Nouman. He just wrote a book, he titled it Nouman. We don't have that book now, but he just compiled everything that he heard from Abu Hanifa. He handed it to Al-Awza'i and he said, read this and then tell me if you'll still criticize him after this. So Al-Awza'i, for 3 days, he read this and he only took breaks for Fard Salah. He just went through it and he contemplated and he pondered. And then Al-Awza'i came to Abdullah al-Mubarak rahimahullah and he says, هَذَا نَبِيلٌ مِنَ الْأَشْيَاخِ. This man is a master of the scholars. And Ibn al-Mubarak said, this is the same man you used to tell me not to go see. This is the same man you used to tell me. So again, a lot of these misunderstandings got worked out. Now we're going to talk about the not so convenient part, which is the politics of it. I don't know if you guys have it in you right now. Do you guys have it in you to talk politics right now? We'll do it anyway, right? Actually, the computer disagrees. This is another one of those awesome diagrams that was made. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward Sister Nai. This took a long time, hours and hours and hours to put this all together, to talk about the political situation now. Now, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, out of the 4 Imams, he really starts, he's most like Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, in that they really could not stay out of politics. They really got involved in politics, in the politics of their time. And that shows you that even them, they had their characteristics, they had their differences as to how to approach the political situation. We talked about the situation in Kufa with Bani Umayyah. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah supported one of the uprisings against Bani Umayyah. All right? And that uprising was by the great-grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, Zaynul Abidin. All right? I'm sorry, the great-great-grandson, Zayd ibn Zayn al-Abidin. So his name is Zayd ibn Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. Zayd ibn Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. So this is the great-grandson, the great-great-grandson of the Prophet ﷺ. He's the son of the man who's known as Zaynul Abidin, the beauty of the worshippers, a great scholar, a great tabi'i that was well known to the people. Zayd ibn Ali was Imam Abu Hanifa's teacher for 2 years. And Zayd ibn Ali, he started a revolt against Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. So Hisham ibn Abdul Malik is 2 Khalifas, if you see here, after Omar ibn Abdul Aziz. So that's the year 105 after Hijrah. Now obviously everyone loved Omar ibn Abdul Aziz. And Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he never met him, but he loved him, he heard of him. And it went downhill with Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. And Zayd ibn Ali, he started that revolt against Hisham. And this revolt was in the year of 121. What that tells you, the year 121, Hisham took the khilaf at the year 105. Meaning they tried, they gave it a shot, they tried to get along with him, it just wasn't working. So finally Zayd started his revolt in the year 121. And Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah supported this revolt. In fact, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah likened it to the Battle of Badr. He said, I consider Zayd's going out like the Battle of Badr. SubhanAllah. So the next accusation that came, some accused him of being Shi'i, some accused him of being Khariji, so on and so forth. He said, I consider Zayd's rebelling, his revolt, like the Battle of Badr. And he was asked, how come you don't go fight with him? Because Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was supporting it. Again, the scholars had to be very careful how they worded their statements, their letters, how they gave hints to their students, all right, about how they felt about these issues. He said, why don't, lima takhallayta an? Why don't you go fight with him? So he said, قَالَ حَبَسَنِي عَنْهُ وَدَائِعُ النَّاسِ. He said, what's holding me back is the amana to the people, the trust to the people. He says, عَرَضْتُهَا عَلَى ibn Abi Layla فَلَمْ يُقْبَلْ. I told it, I gave it, or I entrusted Ibn Abi Layla, I offered it to him to take over for me, and he didn't accept that. He says, فَخِفْتُ أَنْ أَمُوتَ مَجْهَلًا. I was afraid that I die, and it's just going to be death for me, and this, everything that I've worked to achieve here is going to be broken down. He said, وَلَوْ عَلِمْتُ أَنَّ النَّاسَ لَا يَخْذُلُونَهُ كَمَا خَذَلُوا أَبَاهُ. He said, had I known that the people were not going to betray him the way they betrayed his father and his grandfather, meaning I know the people are not going to last with him, they're going to betray him. He says, لَجَاهَدْتُ مَعَهُ. I would go out and I would fight with him. He says, لِأَنَّهُ إِمَامٌ حَقٍّ. He said, because this man is an imam of truth. وَلَكِنْ أُعِينُهُ بِمَالِي. He said, I give him my money. I support him financially. He says, فَبَعَثْتُ إِلَيْهِ بِعَشْرَةِ آلَافِ دِرْهَمْ. I sent him 10,000 dirhams. And I said to the messenger that I sent to him, أنصت عذري له. Give my apologies to him that I'm not out there fighting with him. So Abu Hanifa took a very explicit position. Most of the Imams took very implicit positions. He took a very explicit position on the rebellion of Zayd ibn Ali. And of course, Ja'far al-Sadiq, who was also part of this, again, was a companion of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, and a teacher, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. All four Imams narrated from him. He's a great scholar, and he also supported this rebellion against Bani Umayyah. Now, Zayd ibn Ali was killed in the year 132, all right, by Marwan. All right, so he was killed by Marwan in the year 132, okay? And his son Yahya, the son of Zayd, started a revolt of his own, and he was killed as well, all right? Then Yahya's son Abdullah started a revolt, and he was killed as well. So this wasn't working for them at all. The rebellion of Zayd ibn Ali, and of at that time who were called Al-Alawiyin, the children of Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, it wasn't working, and they were constantly being killed by the people. All of this affected Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, because the Umayyas now were hearing that Imam Abu Hanifa is against them. Okay? Banu Abbas, now the Abbasids rose up, Al-Abbasiyah, they rose up, and you have the Khawarij, they rose up as well. So you have these other revolts that have been created, because once one revolution comes, what happens? A whole bunch of them come, which is why, Ahl Sunnah typically, again, they weren't apolitical. I think that's a lie. I think it's not true. But they were very careful when it came to rebelling against the ruler, if it's going to cause more harm than good, if it's just going to lead to chaos. So you had these other two revolts that grew. All right. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, when the word came that he supported Zayd ibn Ali at that time, Bani Umayyah, they sent someone to torture him. So he was tortured by a man by the name of Omar ibn Hubayrah. And this was in the Umayyi Khilafah, and this is the first time we see here now that Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala would be beaten and imprisoned. That's right after the revolt of Zayd ibn Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he wasn't attacked right away. Basically, Ibn Hubayrah, who was the wali, he was the governor of Iraq for the Umayyads, he came to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and he said, I want to appoint you as the treasurer. I want to make you Khazin Baytul Mal. Why did he want to do that? Because he wants to show the people that he's with us now. Right? All that stuff that he said, disregard it, he's really part of us. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah didn't accept. He said, fine, then I want to make you a judge. He said, no. And then he said, even if you told me to hold the doors of Masjid Wasit for you, I wouldn't agree to do it. How do you expect me to agree to your chopping heads and to your killing innocent people? He said, Wallahi lama uqbal. He said, Wallahi, I will never accept this. SubhanAllah, look at the strength. And what did the Prophet ﷺ say? Inna a'adham al-jihad kalimatu haqq 'inda sultanin jar. Imam Abu Hanifa spoke a word of truth in the face of this oppressor. He said, it's not going to happen. So this man, after that, he took him, Ibn Hubayrah, and he imprisoned him,